Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean, the Digital Event Coordinator at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. We are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges by creating use of technology. Today, I'm very excited to welcome you to join Cybersecurity for IT Manager with Marcus Harvey and Maurice Alfonso. Marcus leads Info Exchange digital transformation programs. He aims to help more than 10,000 organizations get better value from the technology investment, transform operations, and achieve measurable outcomes with clients and communities they work with. He also helped hundreds of not-for-profit move to cloud, reduce IT costs, and enable effective working in a COVID environment. He also worked with a group of not-for-profit technology leaders from Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, supporting them to use technology effectively and transform their organizations. And also we have Maurice today. She's the Information Security Lead at Info Exchange, where she leads information security activities and initiatives across the organizations. She's a member of the Digital Transformation Program team at Info Exchange, where she aims to assist organizations with improving their cybersecurity and risk management capabilities in order to enhance the organization's resilience and outcomes. So before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted. If you have any technical issues, please type into the questions box and I'll be here to assist you. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, just type it in the questions box as well. Maurice and Marcus will be answering them by the end of the webinar. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. Please note that the questions will not be appear to the entire group. And also the webinar is being recorded. The recording deck and the slides will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. And I would like to remind you that there's a short survey at the end. Please help us to complete that for even better experience in the future. All right, now I'll pass on to Marcus and Maurice for today's section. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. And look, I'm thrilled to be here today talking about one of our passions, which is helping non-profits keep their information safe and secure, because often we deal with really sensitive information. But I'd like to start just by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I'm joining from Bunurong country in the Kulin Nation, but know each of you are likely joining from different lands, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, both on the webinar today and throughout the country. Our agenda, we've got a really interesting set of topics we want to talk through. I'm going to give a really brief overview of the Digital Transformation Hub because that's where we've been developing a whole range of resources that are available at no cost so that organizations can use technology more effectively. I was talking with a non-profit peak body over in Canada the other day, and she's very busy thinking about what is digital equality and how can we enhance that for non-profits around Canada. And we're really keen to make sure all non-profits here in Australia, as well as in New Zealand and in our region, Southeast Asia, really get the most out of technology. So I'll give you a bit of an overview, what it offers, how you might be able to use it. And Maurice has a bunch of cybersecurity resources that are linked at the end of her presentation so that you can get more, not just in the 45 minutes to an hour we have today. Maurice is going to give you an overview of the cybersecurity landscape, because one thing, just like technology, unfortunately, cybersecurity threats change all the time. So we'll give you a bit of a sense as to what's happening, where the current risks are, and what you need to think about. We'll talk about good practices organizations should have in place. And what we've really tried to do is make sure that that's as easy as possible for everyone on the webinar. Top cybersecurity incident entry points, because that's changed. 5 years ago, it was the majority of things that we saw were ransomware. People, organizations having their files locked up, and needing good backups, etc., so that they can recover. Today it's different. So Maurice is going to talk through that and what you can do about it. A couple of real life stories, just because unfortunately it does happen all too often, as well as some key takeaways and useful resources. But quickly wanted to cover the hub. So the hub has 6 different areas across it. We've got a digital health check to help you understand where you're strong, where you're weak, and what guides might be useful for you. We've got more than 90 digital guides now across the hub in a whole range of different areas. Good proportion in cybersecurity, but also if you're just starting out and you really just want the foundations, or looking for a new client and case management system or a membership management system. We've got guides that will help organizations walk through that process, as well as expert advice if you need it. Our consultants are available to help organizations get the most out of their technology environment, because sometimes you just need a hand. More than a dozen case studies, a whole range of training resources. This webinar is one of the training resources that we put up on the on the Connecting Up website as a recording if we've said something really interesting and you just want to go back and hear it all again, as well as a bunch of technology discounts, both cybersecurity and more broadly. So the hub we're really targeting as your one-stop shop to help you get started and go on that digital transformation journey. Everything in the hub is structured into one of 5 domains. So the 5 domains covering tech foundations, PCs, servers, collaboration platforms, telephony, file sharing, etc. Information systems to support delivery of your services, whether they be membership, whether they be service delivery, counselling, etc., or environmental, whatever your non-profit's passion, that's what the information systems area can help you find the right things, as well as the core of HR, finance, etc., and to ensure that you're sustainable into the future. Digital marketing resources to build out your impact, ensure that you can reach as many clients, stakeholders, supporters, gather the funds. IT management resources to make sure you get bang for your IT dollar buck, as well as cybersecurity resources. And Maurice will give a brief overview of those again today. But you've probably heard enough from me. Let's get into the guts of it. I'll hand over to Maurice. He'll talk through cybersecurity headlines and the issues. And Maurice, love to hear more.
Thanks, Marcus. Thank you for that overview of the hub, and thank you, Jean, for the earlier introduction. So information security practices are no longer a nice to have, given the increasing nature of our digital footprints and increasing threats, as Marcus alluded to earlier. We must build security resilience into our organizations. Security has been in the headlines every month, with a number of organizations across all sectors of the economy being affected. A view of some of the headlines within the community services sector and some from government as well, as you'll see on the next slide, from the past few months are on these next 2 slides. So on the top left, Oxfam had donor information of over 1 million Australians disclosed via a data breach when a database was accessed via a security incident. The incident in March, on the right, involved a caseworker who worked at a community services organisation and had access to an IT system provided by the Department of Health and Human Services. After leaving the position, his access to the system was not revoked, and he accessed confidential information related to children and committed sex offences. On the bottom, Uniting Care had an attack in April on some of its IT systems and had to resort to manual workarounds due to IT systems being inaccessible. In June, an incident experienced by Uniting Communities where staff were unable to access certain IT systems due to a cyber incident. This again would have required manual workarounds and a change in business processes. And the last one there is fairly recent, linked to the MySA government IT system, where individuals' accounts were accessed via stolen password credentials. This was possible because people had used the same passwords across online IT systems. And when one of these systems had been compromised and passwords obtained, the same passwords gave access to their MySA Gov accounts. And hence, details such as driver's license numbers, which are a key piece of identity information, was leaked. So as you can see, the impacts of cyber incidents vary. In some cases, data is inaccessible due to being locked up by what is known as ransomware. In other cases, personal information is disclosed via a data breach. So some recent statistics on scams, cybercrime, and data breaches in Australia. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, points out that it's very common for scammers to utilise current events and crises to make their scams appear more legitimate. We saw this in 2020 when scammers first used the bushfire emergency and then the COVID-19 pandemic as a basis for new scams. So some stats there on that top left with over $850 million in 2020 lost to scams. And recent news from the Scam Watch website, which is run by the ACCC, advises consumers to watch out for shopping scams as we come to the shopping season time of the year. On the middle there, a statistic from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre from the recent cyber threat report notes that over the 2020-2021 financial year, there have been over 67,500 cybercrime reports. And this equates to 1 every 8 minutes. And on the top right, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner received 446 notifications under the Notifiable Data Breach Scheme and in the reporting period January to June 2021. So the NDB scheme, or Notifiable Data Breach Scheme, if you've not heard about it, was established in February 2018 with the intent on improving consumer protection and driving better security standards for protecting personal information. If a data breach of personal information occurs within an organization and they are bound by the Privacy Act, and there is a risk of serious harm to individuals based on the information disclosed, then the breach must be reported to the Commissioner as well as to the affected individuals. So these increasing events in our headlines and the statistics on cybercrime are indeed a call to action for organizations to review their cybersecurity practices. Following on from those headlines and statistics, a key message is that the human element is significant in the delivery of security in today's organizations. Cybersecurity management is at its core about risk management and making risk-based decisions. It requires the balance of measures in the areas of people, process, and technology to address risk. So the human element is that people component. For example, for staff to be aware of certain processes on how to securely share information or how to use technology securely by creating a strong password. Security behaviors and the culture and sentiment on security within an organization are greatly influenced by you and your perception of risk. And most importantly, these perceptions can be changed. Security is really everybody's responsibility. So now shifting the focus to the technology and process components. This is a diagrammatic representation of the technology layers requiring consideration of security protections. One of the core principles of security is defense in depth, and the idea must be that ultimately layers of protection make it more difficult for threat actors, also known as adversaries or hackers or attackers, to succeed. So on the diagram here, ranging from the protections on cloud applications that may be in use in your organization, for example, the Google platform or Microsoft 365, to using the internet safely and to the network of your organization with security of network devices such as firewalls, securing the devices in use, such as those used by your staff, the specific applications on devices, and to the data, where the data is what ultimately we're trying to protect. You may have heard of the Essential 8, which is a set of technical mitigation strategies developed by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre and highly recommended for organizations to implement. With these measures in place, it makes it harder for adversaries to compromise systems. So these measures range from implementing multi-factor authentication, which is that additional factor to use in addition to a password to access an IT system, having data backups in place, or patching or updating operating systems and applications. We'll cover off some particular security points that are relevant for these layers in the coming slides. So on to data protection. And if I could just say, if you could put your questions into the chat box as we go on, we'll get to them at the end, that would be great. So organizational data is a key asset. This could be data related to your clients or customers, such as their personal information, or data that's important for particular business processes, such as finance. It's really important that staff understand where to store data so that it is backed up. Backup frequency is dependent on how much data you could afford to lose in the event that an IT system or application becomes unavailable. For example, if lots of data changes are made to a system, you would back up daily. Otherwise, it may be weekly. In addition, for information that is of a confidential or sensitive nature, staff should be made aware of how to handle this type of data when sharing it with others or storing it. That's the second point there. And if we think back to that earlier slide about the human element in security behaviors, this includes educating staff on the expectations of data protection. What do we expect our staff to do? That's an important thing that organizations must have in place. There's an expectation of policy and behavior. In addition, physical document protection is important, particularly now that many staff may be working in environments other than in the office. It's important to protect physical documents as well. There's a useful framework developed by Telstra called the 5 No's of cybersecurity, and it has 5 data-centric questions that are good to work through to flesh out data protection needs. Some of those questions are on understanding the value of the data to your organization and where it is located, for example. So the link to this framework is available in the resource section at the end of this slide pack. Now on to user access. So access to applications and IT systems is that next level of protection, since obviously we store data within systems. For access to systems, generally the longer the password, the stronger it is. The good practice advice on passwords now is to use a passphrase, which is a string of words that you can remember. So this makes a password longer, it's easier to remember and harder to crack. Of course, you could throw in, numeric numbers or special characters, but the general practice now is to make it longer and use words that will help you remember it easier. The second point there is on multi-factor authentication. This is one of the essential 8 controls that I mentioned previously, and this has been seen as a win against phishing attacks and preventing a number of incidents that arise out of password use. Not reusing passwords is key to prevent what are called credential stuffing attacks, where if a username and password is compromised from one IT system or service, the attackers will attempt to use the same password to access other IT systems. If passwords are unique, the compromise will be prevented. The result of reusing passwords was stated as the cause of the security incident on the MySA Gov system that we talked about earlier. If a password is compromised, then it must be changed immediately. The advice on password expiry and regular change of passwords varies. For example, some organizations and regulations still require passwords to expire after set periods of time. However, in some cases, password expiry is considered a past best practice because it does not increase security. Instead, passwords must be strong, so a long passphrase, and multi-factor authentication must be used. And the last point there is on the sharing of passwords. Now, this can be a challenge, I know, in some organizations where staff or volunteers share accounts, for example. Hence, it's good to ensure there is practices in place, such as the ones listed, in terms of sharing the password only with those who need it and changing it if someone who knows it leaves the organization. So in terms of device protection, keeping devices physically secure and up to date is really important. You may remember the WannaCry incident in 2017, which resulted in ransomware being deployed to machines around the world and making them unusable. It affected the National Health Service in the UK, for example. This was possible because a Windows operating system patch to address a vulnerability was not deployed to systems, and as a result, the vulnerability was exploited by attackers. So keeping your devices, applications, operating systems up to date is really important. In terms of the use of bring your own devices, where staff might use their personal laptops or mobile phones for work, it is important to ensure they understand how they must protect the device. So there's some points on the slide here. For example, using a passcode, they have to keep their device up to date when they're prompted for the installs, never storing personal information about clients on the device. It's important that there's an expectation and understanding there of how they should use their own personal device for work. And the last point there on network security. Now, this would vary depending on your organization. However, some important considerations from a network security perspective are, the firewall configurations to protect your network from the outside world, the use of secure network protocols, and in the case where there's vulnerabilities in older protocols, that they are phased out and the newer ones are adopted, the use of anti-malware software, virtual private networks or VPNs for remote access into your organizational network, wireless network configurations, and email filtering. The topic of network security would cover another presentation in and of itself, but these are just some of the key points to consider. So while we can do a lot to prevent incidents, these may still occur due to the fast-changing nature of threats or accidental user behavior. A security incident is an adverse event which poses a threat to an organization's information systems and services. It's important, therefore, to have a means for staff to report potential security incidents. This might be to IT support within your organization or a particular contact point. Some examples of incidents are shown here, including unfamiliar activity on a device or disclosure of information to an unauthorized person. If a device or removable media like a USB stick has been lost and that removable media has sensitive data on it. Unescorted people on office premises, probably not so prevalent now with many people still working remotely, but that's an important one to consider as staff may start to transition back to the office, as well as the last one there on physical access cards that have been lost or stolen and that would allow access into an office. So making staff aware of the types of incidents that could occur and their role in reporting something that may be a potential incident is a key security control in a way. This is the first step in building a reliable incident response process. So on the use of email, the internet, and social media, staff must be aware of their obligations, including some of the points listed here. What is the expectation on the use of organizational email? Are they allowed to use it for their personal purposes? Not at all, or to a limit? That should be communicated to staff. Being aware of phishing emails and what is acceptable when representing the organization on social media platforms. There's a useful end user policy on the Digital Transformation Hub, which I will show you now. So this is a page from one of the guides on the Hub, and it's titled DIY End User Security Policy. And if you click through, we've got a policy template here that was developed by PwC Australia. And essentially, it's a template that you can download for free and customize for your organization. I'll just quickly show you one of the introductory controls here. This one's about password security, as we spoke about previously. What are your organization's expectations on the use of passwords, the use of MFA? How should staff secure their passwords, not to reuse old passwords, etc. And there's a few additional sections on data protection, removable media, email, internet security, and so on. So I encourage you to visit this page on the Hub. It's in the resource section as well, and download the template and adapt it for your organization. All right. Just a reminder again, to put your questions into the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. So top security incident entry points, and this is taken from a fairly recent global threat report from May this year. There are increases in phishing emails sent to trick users into revealing personal information or clicking on web links, and through that you could get malware or, for example, ransomware onto your machine and then onto your organization's network. The use of stolen credentials to gain access is also prevalent, highlighting the need for password hygiene and multi-factor authentication. And the same report indicated that 85% of breaches involve the human element, hence the need for user awareness and user education on security practices and behaviors being key. And some of the other examples there on misconfiguration, for example, user access not being removed when it must be. We saw a previous headline on that when we covered up the security headline slide, and misdelivery of sensitive information. So sent to the wrong recipient was another incident entry point. So some real life phishing stories now. We had a staff member receive this message, this email message about emails that could not be delivered. So if you can see the time on this email, it was 6:20 on a Tuesday. It might have been one of the first emails the staff members saw as they opened their inbox, and they clicked on the red review button and were presented with what looked like a standard Microsoft SharePoint login page with their username already filled in. They entered their password and clicked login. Now at that point, they had given up their password. Fortunately, multi-factor authentication on this account was employed, and so access to the account was blocked. The staff member was still asked to change their password after. Now, if you look at the telltale signs in this email, the from address does look suspicious. It's got a .de, as well as the link. There's lots of strange characters in there. These are some of the telltale signs of the phishing email, but in this particular case, MFA was really the saving point. Here's another example of a real life phishing email, which is what is called business email compromise. So an email request was received to change bank account details. This was sent, looked like it was coming from a staff member and to the payroll department. And in response to the first email, the payroll department sent a reply requesting the bank details and not noticing the from email address, at which point the email response was received by payroll, and due to the grammar in the second email, the payroll department realized that this email was not legitimate. So again, if you look at the from email address, you can see that it does look suspicious. It wouldn't have been coming from the staff member. This is not the organizational domain we were talking about in terms of the organization we're referring to here. So these are some of the signs you should look out for in terms of the from email address, grammar being another. So business email compromise is a current trend where an attempt to divert funds is made either via a supplier communication or, as in this example, with a request made to payroll. The control to prevent this is a business process change. You don't accept change of bank account details from vendors, employees, without separately verifying the request. Pick up the phone and call a number you have from the supplier's website, or a number you have on your system for your staff member, and don't use the same phone number that's within the email footer to verify the request. This is a useful poster which highlights the general attributes of a phishing email. Note that not all these may apply, as phishing emails can have different intents, as we saw in the previous examples. With phishing, the attacker uses social engineering principles to trick the person into performing an action. So these principles might be a sense of urgency or scarcity. And if we look at the example here, the message is that you are eligible for a tax refund. That sounds really great, so it would be really enticing to click on that link. However, important to take notes of the signs in the email. So look at the from address, the urgent call to action, the deadline is this Friday, click here. So these are some of the signs to look out for in a phishing email. All right, now we have a poll question. Thank you, Jean, for launching the poll. And we would love it if you could share your response to the question here. Have you been affected by data theft or IT system compromise? So this could be at work, in your organization environment, or in your personal life, for example. Based on the statistics we saw in the earlier slides, incidents relating to data theft or system compromise are on the rise. So it would be good to get a response from our attendees here today.
Thank you, Maurice. So we just launched a poll, and then there's 83% voted. So let's wait for a couple of seconds. All right, looks like it's all voted. Let me share the results.
Sure.
All right, so wow, it's 50% yes and 50% no. It's half and half.
Oh, wow. Okay. So for those who voted yes, you know, reflective of the stats on cybercrime we saw earlier, and for no, you know, that's great. You're part of the few who haven't been affected, and probably demonstrates you have good cyber hygiene. One of my experiences where I was partly involved in an incident was where a person's work Microsoft 365 email account was compromised. So the adversary accessed this person's email, set up an email forwarding rule to forward email to an external address and delete incoming email from the inbox. They then sent out spam emails from the person's account to others that the person had recently communicated with, bearing the question, can you do me a favor? I was one of those who received that email, and you know, it looked really legitimate. It came from the person, and you know, I responded and I said, yes, you know, how can I help? And fortunately, that was the extent of my involvement there. Didn't get any further. The compromise was detected because the email was received by others within the organization who clarified with the individual on whether they had really sent the email. And when it was confirmed this was not the case, the Microsoft account was disabled. The concerning thing, as I later heard, was that the email account contained a file of customer information that was personal information. And what ensued was an extensive log search to determine whether that file was accessed or downloaded from the person's email. And after extensive investigation over a number of days, it was determined that the file with customer information was not accessed. Otherwise, it would have been a notifiable data breach. And what is still not known was how the compromise happened. It may have been via a phishing email where the password was entered, or the use of public Wi-Fi to access the Microsoft account where the password was obtained. So at this point, the organization didn't have multi-factor authentication, and that would have been a key control to prevent this sort of incident happening. So now there is MFA on the staff members' accounts, and there's a policy in place indicating that customer information must not be stored within email. It should always be stored within an appropriate system. Right. So we thought it would be useful to show you a phishing quiz that can be taken for free from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre website. The link is on this slide, so you'll have a reference to it when you get the slides later on after the webinar. But I'll run through one of the questions here now. So there's 4 of these, and it's a great exercise to run through with your staff or to point your staff to. And it's just really, is this email real or a scam? So if you look through the content of this email, it's the Australian government advising you about an allocation of your subsidy benefit, and you are asked to reply to the email and attach a copy of your driver's license or passport or Medicare card and your name, date of birth, tax file number. Now, I wouldn't be sending any of that sort of information via email, so I'm going to say that this is a scam. And the quiz is really good. It takes you through and looks at the pointers as to how this demonstrates it is a scam. So it's not personalized. They're sending it to thousands of email addresses. The recipient is asked to provide personally identifiable information, such as your full name, tax file number, etc. And this may open up an avenue for identity theft. Government agencies would not ask you to reply and provide your details such as this by email or text message. There's inconsistencies in language and font is another red flag. And there again, the same. And this is on to the next one. So yeah, I won't go through this one here, but it's a good exercise to run through with your staff. Okay, so some business processes requiring a security lens are listed here. We touched on business email compromise previously, and phishing emails often target the finance area. So ensuring delegations of authority are appropriate and reviewed regularly, For large amounts of spend, having double signatures. And the last one, which we spoke about previously, verifying the change of bank account details using an alternate channel and not using details that are within the email you receive, such as the phone number. And for human resource processes, important to incorporate security practices within the onboarding and offboarding activities. So through staff screening and appropriate checks, as well as if a staff member leaves, system access removal, and from a learning and development perspective, awareness training. It's also important to encourage and acknowledge the reporting of events that may be security incidents, as this is a path to continuous improvement of security practices. So encouraging staff to notify somebody within the organization who's the relevant contact point if they're concerned or worried about something relating to data or systems or anything that looks amiss. Okay, so some key takeaways to stay secure. The first one, multi-factor authentication, which is that additional layer of protection. It's really seen as a win against phishing attacks or attempts, as we've seen, as well as using strong passwords or passphrases that are unique and not reused across accounts. User education, exercising caution with emails received, and directing staff to that phishing quiz, for example, is a good thing to do. And remembering as well that email addresses can be spoofed, as I talked through with the example that I was partly involved in. So be on the lookout for any requests you receive by email that may look suspect, and confirm with the user in an alternate channel. The Essential 8, it's the 8 core technical security measures recommended by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre to protect your organization. So as we covered off earlier, multi-factor authentication, backups, making sure your systems and applications are up to date. Other ones include appropriate access levels for those who might have administrative rights or privileged users and what they have access to as opposed to your regular users, making sure there's that distinction. And there's a couple of others there in the Essential 8. And the last one, making cybersecurity risk management and governance a priority. Have the conversations on prioritizing cybersecurity in your organization. It's no longer, in a sense, just an IT discussion. It goes higher than that. It goes broader than that. So make sure that you have the conversations on what needs to be done within the organization. And as I mentioned earlier, the 5 No's, which is the framework from Telstra, which you'll see on the next slide, is a good starting point to have those discussions. And having appropriate IT security policies, as I showed you the template earlier as well, which you can download for free and customize, is an important part of security governance, as well as having a contact point for staff to talk to if they're not sure about something or worried about something. All right, so just some useful resources from the Digital Transformation Hub. There's a range of guides there that you can access for free, and the security policy template, which is for end users, is up there on the hub. It's a Word document format. There is an IT security policy that is in the process of being developed and will also be available on the hub soon. And we run a monthly lunch and learn session, Cybersecurity 101 for not-for-profit staff. The next one is Wednesday, the 16th of February from 1 to 1:30 p.m. So feel free to encourage staff from your organization to attend. The registration link via Connecting Up is not yet available, but it will be in due course. But the reference to the webinar is on that link via the Digital Transformation Hub. A few other guidelines there on privacy are also available, and the 5 No's of cybersecurity with the data-centric questions I mentioned earlier. And just last week, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre announced an expansion to its 24-hour call centre, particularly benefiting small and medium-sized business owners. So if you're in need of assistance in regards to an incident or some particular cybersecurity advice, you could call on that 1300 Cyber 1 number. They also run a report cyber service where you can report cybercrime via their website. And the third last link there, Have I Been Pawned, is useful to check if your personal details have been compromised. It's run by a reputable security researcher, Troy Hunt. He runs the Have I Been Pawned website. ID Care, which offers guidance on identity theft, as well as general cyber guidance, is another good reference. And the last one is the security awareness tip of the day. All right, that's it for content, and happy for questions and discussion now.
Thank you very much, Maurice, and also Marcus. It's a really helpful and informative sections, and I already saw some questions now. Let me go into it. Right, so we got Nishita. So she's asking, do you have some cybersecurity quiz on the Digital Transformation Hub?
There is a quiz that you can take, which will give you an assessment of security posture of your organization across, 6 areas. So it will just give you an assessment of where you're at in terms of certain capabilities like information protection, the Essential 8, and so on. That's what's available on the Hub.
Lovely, great. So I guess the Hub, the link is on the last page of the slide deck, so that she can refer to. Yeah,
that's correct. So that first link up there, the guide cybersecurity, you could reference that and reach the quiz via that link.
Excellent.
Top left of the screen once you go through that link.
Great, thank you. All right, so just a reminder, because this presentation deck and the recording will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days, so you get all the informations. All right, so Nishita is asking also, I'm interested to join this Cybersecurity 101. Yes, and then I can answer this question, and then after that, I'll send you the link for the registration link for the next Cybersecurity 101. Yeah. So just wait for that. All right, so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask right now, because we have the experts here. It's a really good opportunities we can interact and then understand more about the cybersecurity. All right, so we got one question here. So it's a good question. Do you have any recommendations in password management?
Password managers, yeah, password managers are a good tool to use if you have lots of passwords to remember, which I would say is most of us these days. There's a few tools available. There is one product called Dashlane, which is available via Connecting Up. And there's a few others such as 1Password or LastPass. But what I would say is make sure you choose a password manager that has the capability for multi-factor authentication, as well as being able to have multiple accounts, not just have one account that accesses all the passwords in there, depending on whether it's for your personal use or organizational use. But in an organizational context, make sure you can have multiple accounts.
Yeah, thank you for that, Maurice. All right, so we have Luke. So he's asking, do you have any recommendations or templates for writing an incident report? Sorry, 1 second. Incident response plan or disaster recovery plan?
We are in the process of developing disaster recovery and business continuity plan guides for the Hub. So that should be on the Hub sometime early next year. As far as incident response, nothing at the moment, but if there is interest in that, that's one that we can look at as well. So thank you for the question.
No worries, that's wonderful. This is how we understand the customer's needs, and then we are going to develop that. So Luke, wait for that. And Rebecca, so she's asking, should we report attempts for cybersecurity breaches? And the police said that they only want to know when there's a crime that's actually successful. And wouldn't someone want to know that you have the details of cyber criminals who have not been successful in scamming your organization?
Yeah, I would say first point of call, as I said on this slide, fourth last point, report that to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. And just last week, they've expanded their hotline coverage for small and medium-sized businesses in Australia. So instead of going to the police, I would say go to the ACSC first, and they would direct you accordingly.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so let me see. So we got another question. It's about like, if you can have only one thing to do, what would you like to do in order to improve the cybersecurity?
Top thing I would say is multi-factor authentication on your key systems, but have a look at the essential 8, because that has been proven as strategies that prevent the majority of incidents. So multi-factor authentication, having backups of your important data, as well as keeping your operating systems and applications up to date, because that's how systems are compromised. If they have vulnerabilities that have not been updated or patched, adversaries target those, they exploit them, they get onto your systems, they compromise your data. So have a look at the essential 8. That would be a good reference.
Definitely. Thank you, Maurice. So looks like we answered most of the questions. So before we finish and before I wrap up, do you have anything in additional you would like to tell or share?
Not at this point. Marcus, is there anything you'd like to add?
Oh, look, I think my main comment is to say, in all our experience, it takes far more work to recover from a cybersecurity breach than it does to prevent one in the first place. So it's just to say, you know, fabulous to have you here today, getting some tips and tricks in terms of what's useful and what you can do. Making that little bit of time to get the protections in place will save you an awful lot of time, and in the event that one does occur. So please don't delay, please get the controls in place.
Thank you very much, Marcus. All right, so before we finish, as you can see my screen right now, there's a really lovely event coming up. So it's planning your content calendar for next year, 2022. So it's basically aimed to coach you how to plan a social media calendar. So as you know, there are so many different platforms. So how could you better utilize your limited resources in order to maximize the advantage from it? So we'll show the golden rules of how to do the calendar, as well as how to, based on your objectives, audience resources, to give you some tips and guidelines on the posting. And sometimes we don't understand when we are running out of creativeness, how could you better use the previous resources or other people's resources in order to put it in your own place. So there's lots of tips and also about some trends next year. So if you are interested, please feel free to register. I'll be putting this into the follow-up email as well, together with the presentation deck today. So you can just click on the link and register. These events will be on the 9th of December. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maurice and Marcus again. And I'm sure we'll see you very soon next. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks, Marcus. Bye, everyone.